Day 2 and 3 of the NFL draft is in the books. Cody and I recap the draft. Who we like and who do we love?
You are Locked On Texans, your daily Houston Texans podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to a Monday episode of the Locked On Texan podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Shout out to our everydayers out there. Make sure you guys are following the Locked On Texan podcast on YouTube and, of course, all of your major podcasting platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Megaphone, and Spotify. If you are a everydayer, go ahead and mention you are everydayer in the comments on YouTube or tweet at us under at Locked On Texans or John_Hickman12 along with Cody Davis _24.
Can I say something real quick?
Absolutely.
I'm going to go ahead and call this a Victory Monday because the Houston Texans killed the draft. So Victory Monday!
The last Victory Monday was a shock to many's eyes when they beat the Indianapolis Colts in Week 18, and all hope was lost, at least thought to be lost. But we are here to celebrate the Houston Texans, recapping the entire draft. Houston came out of the 2023 NFL draft with 9 new members to the franchise. Quarterback C.J. Stroud, edge rusher Will Anderson taken in the first round with picks 2 and 3. Center Juice Scruggs, wide receiver out of U of H, Tank Dell, edge out of the Big 12. Edge rusher Dylan Horton led the Big 12 in sacks. Linebacker out of Alabama, another Alabama linebacker added to the Texan linebacker depth chart. Henry Toad. Center Jarrett Wayne, wide receiver, another Big 12 player, Xavier Hutchinson, and Pitt safety Brandon Hill. Houston addressed every positional need for this team. Fun fact, between the 9 draft picks, they combined for nearly 330 collegiate game experience. So they got some ballers that's been through the trenches, of course. One of my favorite quotes from the weekend was from rookie center Juice Scruggs. Any lineman's dream is to have a running back like Dameon Pierce behind you. So I know the day 2 center is ready to play some football for the Houston Texans. Houston also signed 8 undrafted rookie free agents, including wide receiver Jarrett Wayne. You guys remember the Locked On podcast we did with Locked On Steelers who host Chris Carter, who also covers Pitt football. We talked about Jarrett Wayne. He could be a guy that can come in and compete for the Nico Collins spot. Today we are recapping day 2 and 3 of the draft, starting with Friday's day 2, round 2 and 3. Cody, what are your thoughts?
Day 2, I came away with mixed emotions. I'm not going to lie to you, John. And I say mixed emotions only because I like the draft pick of Juice, but I did not like what the Houston Texans had to do in order to get there. For those of you guys who don't know, the Houston Texans did come into day 2 with the number 65th pick of the 2023 NFL draft, but they traded up in order to get Juice with the Philadelphia Eagles. They sent picks 65, 188, and 230 to Philadelphia to draft Juice. John, I'm a little bit, once again, I like him as a player. However, knowing the fact that he has dealt with a very devastating injury, and also knowing the fact that they did address a need at the center position, I'm not too sure, or I don't understand the notion of what made Nick Caserio and head coach DeMeco Ryans. I just don't understand the notion that made them trade up for Juice. Once again, I like him as a prospect. This is a guy throughout his entire career at Penn State. He only gave up 1 sack. However, from pick 65 to pick 62, I'm not too sure about that. I do love the addition of Tank Dell, the wide receiver from the University of Houston. John, listeners and viewers, I am under the impression that the addition of Tank Dell, I think his first major role with this team, he will take over as the primary kick returner, especially with considering that Tremon Smith, a guy who has held that position over the last 2 years, we lost him in free agency to the Tennessee Titans, if I'm not mistaken. Tank Dell, very speedy receiver. He ran a 4.49 at his pro day, and even though it didn't show up at the University of Houston, he did have an opportunity to run several kickoff returns back. According to Coach Hutchinson, the head coach over at University of Houston, he did say at his pro day that Tank Dell rushed for, I believe, 4 or 5 kick returns last season, and 3 or 4 of them got called back for some reason. He still doesn't understand why. I like the addition of Tank, but Juice, once again, I like him as a prospect, but I just think that was too much to give up to a guy to where I'm not too sure come week 1 of the 2023 campaign. I'm not sure that he's going to be starting alongside the rest of those big guys up front.
Cody, what I like most about those day 2 picks is that they are 2 players that I think can challenge, the current players at that respective position, the center position, the wide receiver position. And I love the fact that you made note of Tank Dell's, I think, immediate impact will be on special teams. These are also 2 players that Houston obviously wanted, trading up for both Scruggs and Tank Dell. And as we know, Houston was at Tank Dell pro day. They loved him, talked to him multiple times. So he was a player that I think fit what first round Will Anderson was, like a guy that Houston really wants to come in, be impactful, but also be a part of this culture that they're changing here in Houston. So I like the moves, honestly, right? I don't think between Scruggs or Tank Dell, these are 2 players that you expect to start immediately. There is no rush for Scruggs to start immediately. There's no rush for Tank Dell to start immediately. There are opportunities for them to get on the field. Scruggs played in multiple positions. We know that Houston traded for Shaq Mason. I got some guard experience, so we'll look at how Houston can ease him into his role, right? And I think there's going to be some healthy competition between Scruggs, Marissi, Quisenberry. But what else can Scruggs compete at? Maybe their left guard position. We'll see how that works out with Kenyon Green. Just throwing it out there. I still believe that Kenyon Green will solidify his role as left guard. But it'll be some healthy competition there across that offensive line. And I think that's a good thing to talk about. Again, between these 2 players, they are 2 guys that you don't have to rush them on the field. Right? I really truly believe that. And whenever they do get on the field, especially when I look at a Tank Dell, just put him in positions to succeed early on and allow him to get a feel of the game in the NFL. But I like the day 2 picks, honestly, because these were 2 players Houston obviously wanted, traded up for both of these guys to go get because they believe that they can be an impact to this roster in some ways immediately in whatever role that they have for them to start off their young careers.
I think there might be some pressure on Juice only because that was a lot to give up for a guy that, like I say, John, I really don't know if he's going to have an opportunity to start right away. I mean, look, by the way, Nick Caserio pulled off 8 trades in this draft. So, there was
an NFL draft record for how many trades went on as well. So,
yeah,
and I'm glad you mentioned that because if we're being honest, between Nick and between him and D'Amico Ryans, they've been kind of tipping their hat in hindsight, some of the things that they're going to do. The optionality, the flexibility. Like, I keep bringing it up throughout the entire offseason, but these 2 men have came out multiple times and kind of told us in our face, y'all know we got a lot of picks, right? And so we're going to use these picks to get the players that we have high on our draft boards, trading up in the first round to go get the 2 players that they really believe in, 2 franchise-changing guys, right? Trading up to the end of the second round to go get Juice Scruggs, addressing the center position. Then traded up again to go get Tank Dell. Go getting the guy, homegrown guy, played at U of A, can be an immediate impact for your special teams, as Cody pointed out, kick and punt return. Like, these are the guys that they loved, and they had the picks between next year and this year's draft to go get them, right? And between day 2, and of course we get into day 3. Does it feel like this team is going to tank again? Does it feel like this team is going to be towards the bottom of the AFC, let alone the AFC South? No, and I think that's important to look at when you analyze why they traded up for some of these guys. We used to start the show off with it, but they're putting a team together. They're building a team. And if you had to sacrifice some picks, but that's okay because you got the players at the positions that you need upgrades at.
Since we're talking about trades, I do want to mention this. I was going to say this later in the show, but I want to mention it now. I think one of the best moves Nick Caserio did on Saturday was to replace that 2024 third-round pick that he had to use in order to get Will Anderson. I like that because that just lets you know that Nick Caserio is always trying to put this team in the best position to maximize every area he can in order to improve this roster. I know that was something small, but that was one of my favorite moves of the draft.
Looking for a delicious snack, but don't want all of the sugar and calories, then you need to try Built Bar, the best tasting protein bar on the market. What makes Built Bar so good? Well, for starters, they're covered in 100% real chocolate. On top of that, Cody and listeners, they got unbelievable flavors, amazing flavors like the churro, the peanut butter brownie, and cookies and cream. But to top it all off, what's even better than the great tasting flavors that they have, Built Bar is healthy for you in your everyday life. Only 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and a whopping 17 grams of protein. Tastes great, an even better snack. You can run into your local Walmart or Sam's Club while you're out running errands with your wife or your girlfriend or your husband who want to go to Target and Starbucks and do all of the little things. You may be needing a snack. You can stop at your Walmart today to go get you a box of Built Bar. That's right. You can pick up a 4-box of cookies and cream, double chocolate, or coconut puff for all you coconut fanatics out there. Stop in, get you a snack to hold you over for the day. It'll taste great, but it's like a sneaky desire because it's great for you, but it's also healthy as well. So make sure you check out Built Bar. You can go online at builtbar.com. Or once again, run into your local Walmart or Sam's Club and grab a 13 or 4 box of cookies and cream or whatever your favorite flavor is. Welcome back in, Locked On Texan listeners and viewers. Day 2 and 3 of the draft discussion. Got to look at day 3. The Houston Texans once again drafted edge rusher Dylan Horton out of TCU. Linebacker Henry To'oTo'o, center Jared Patterson, wide receiver Xavier Hutchinson, and safety Brandon Hill. Cody, of those day 3 picks, I got to tell you my favorite was Xavier Hutchinson. This is a guy, watched him like last year against UT, 10 catches, 154 yards, I believe, and a touchdown or 2. Like he's a player that, again, for Houston, does he need to start right away? No, he doesn't. But he is a player. Of course, we look at C.J. Stroud as a day 1 starter. We look at Will Anderson as a day 1 starter. Between Juice Scruggs, maybe center Jared Patterson, like maybe those are some guys that sneak in at their center position depending on how camp goes and can beat out the veterans to start day 1. But Xavier Hutchinson with a wide receiver group, which if we're still being honest, isn't still spectacular. Amari Rodgers, John Mechie, who I can't wait to watch football, play football, Nico Collins, Noah Brown, Robert Woods. I know I may be forgetting somebody now. Tank Dell and adding Xavier Hutchinson. He's a guy that has some collegiate games experience, playing in the Big 12 and the offense, in the conference that like to throw the ball. And I think that when it's all said and done, he may be the guy that maybe not a day 1 starter, but when we look in maybe 7 to 8 weeks, we're seeing his snaps go up, his snap count go up. Maybe he's 17 to start. Then by week 8, you're seeing him play 44, 45 to maybe 55% of the snaps offensively because he's able to get in the game, find ways to make plays down the field. He is a guy that I anticipate Houston being able to use to stretch the field, make plays down the field to help open up this offense.
That is my favorite pick of day 3. And John, you might look at me crazy when I say this. he's not a day one starter. Let me just say that. However, I agree with you. I think as the season goes on, we are definitely going to see his snap count go up. However, John, I would not be surprised that by the end of the 2023 campaign, we're looking at Xavier as a guy who can basically take the helm as this team's number one wide receiver. And I say that because this guy is talented. This guy has shown that it don't matter if he was at a JUCO college at Blinn. It didn't matter if he was at Iowa State, racking up over 1,000 receiving yards. Like, this guy has excelled on every single level. And the one thing that I love about him, I love the fact how he talked about how the 2 years he spent at Blinn College kind of helped shape his life both on and off the field. And when he was sitting there talking, man, I couldn't help but to think about how we used to hear Cam Newton say, you know, his one season at Blinn basically shaped the player that he became on and off the field. And no, I'm not about to say that he's going to be an MVP caliber player like a Cam Newton was, but this player, this guy, this wide receiver at 6'2", I would not be surprised come towards the middle or the end of the 2023 campaign. We are basically saying next year he can be this team's number one wide receiver because he is just that good, ladies and gentlemen. He spent 3 years at Ohio State, and every single season he was first team all Big 12. That is pretty remarkable. Another guy that I like, I can't pronounce his name, so I'm going to call him Henry T, linebacker from Alabama. I like him because I like him because this is a guy that can help you get after the quarterback, but he can also excel in pass coverage as well. I'm actually excited to see how the 2023 campaign is going to shape up, because between him, Christian Harris, with the mindset of Coach DeMeco Ryans, and of course, all of them from Alabama, I think that might be the linebacker pairing that we always wanted to see Christian Harris play. I know Christian Harris is definitely going to take a leap forward. I'm looking at Henry the same way I'm looking at Xavier. He's not a day one starter. It's going to take him some time to get accustomed to the NFL level, but I think Coach DeMeco Ryans has the potential and has the capability, the development as a coach to really get the best out of Henry, and it's going to make his job a lot easier playing alongside Christian Harris.
Yeah, and with day three, and of course, day two, but day three especially, I loved Houston going to get young guys to help fill this depth up.
That was another thing I love.
Like when we look at, you mentioned the linebacker position. Right now, Houston has Christian Harris, Blake Cashman, Jake Hansen, Garrett Wallow, the rookie Henry Toto, Christian Kirksey, Denzel Perriman, and Corey Littleton. That's 8 linebackers right there. Not to mention whoever they picked up as an undrafted free agent or whoever they may pick up when the rest of the offseason series gets kicked off. And you also look at the wide receiver position. Again, not spectacular, but Robert Woods, Nico Collins, Noah Brown, Tank Dell, Amari Rogers, Jalen Camp, Xavier Hutchinson, Drew Estrada. Like, there's some healthy competition there. The center position, the offensive line position. They picked up guys that can come in and compete, that are young, right? Kind of get some of these older guys out the paint a little bit. No disrespect, but that can be around, that you can stash away. Maybe practice squad them. Maybe bottom of the depth type of guy. But they'll learn and they'll get better and they'll develop. I love Henry Thornton. Dylan Horton. Mixing names up right now. Edge rusher out of TCU, right? You look at the D-line depth chart. You got Will Anderson, John Gurnard, Jerry Hughes, Chase Winovich, Derek Rivers, right? Damone Harris. But you got some guys on there that can come in right now with Dylan Horton, and who's to say he won't beat out a guy like a Harris or a Chase Winovich on the depth chart? Or I look at Horton maybe like I look at Hutchinson, starting off only playing maybe like 20% of the defensive snaps for Houston, mainly special team type of guy. But he can get in, make some plays along the way, and maybe by the end of the year, he's bumping it up to playing 40% of the defensive snaps. So I love Houston addressing the depth in day 3. Some of these guys that can eventually maybe play some good football for the Houston Texans. I think they killed it in this draft by doing that as well.
Really quick before we move on to our next segment, Brandon Hill. Do you think he's going to be the ticket for the Houston Texans to finally depart from Eric Murray? Because you just said it. They got a lot of young guys that could kind of like, body these old players out of the paint. And when I heard the selection of Brandon Hill, I said, Eric, I wouldn't be surprised if towards the middle of the 2023 campaign, we get that notification. Maybe somebody might leak it to us. Who knows? But Eric Murray, man, that safety position is looking less and less like an opportunity for him.
Yeah, and it's very interesting right now. Of course, we got Jimmy Ward and Jalen Petrie, but MJ Stewart played some good ball for Houston last year. Grayland Arnold had some good moments for Houston last year. Now Brandon Hill competing with Eric Murray. Now, Brandon Hill does play strong. Eric Murray does play free, but
they like
we're talking about D'Amico Ryans here and the defense that he's going to coach up. So however you can get on the field to make plays, you should be able to do so with a defensive coach like D'Amico. Welcome back in. Locked On Texans everydayers. Make sure that you are subscribed to the Locked On Texans podcast on YouTube and all of the major podcasting platforms. Before we close out today's podcast, final thoughts of the 2023 NFL Draft for the Houston Texans. And if you guys are watching on YouTube, as always, make sure that you comment how you feel your final thoughts of this team, of this draft went. Cody, I actually had I tweeted, and I got some good responses from people, man. Texas fans, the draft is over. The coach is here. The GM was good. The owners got it. The QB and edge is in the city. How y'all really feel? Like, what's your real emotion? Got some good responses, but I think maybe my favorite was from Sean Easley at Foxy Locks on Twitter. She said in response to that tweet, surprised, excited for training camp and the season. And I think surprise was probably the realest emotion that someone could have, because the fan base was legit worried. For a few weeks, this fan base was ready to tear each other's heads off, and they were worried. Now, when this draft was over with on late Saturday, I watched how the Houston Texans addressed their needs in the draft, right? The whole offseason, we talked about Houston maybe getting multiple edge guys, maybe getting multiple wide receivers, making sure that they draft a center, maybe bringing in somebody else to compete across that offensive line. Of course, the quarterback position, and bringing in somebody late. Remember the conversation? A late rounder at safety, right? That was also a conversation. So Houston was able to address their positional needs, but they started off on Thursday night with a spectacular trade up, and fans did not suspect it. That alone was a surprise for the fan base, and I love the fact that response was real. It was a surprise for Houston to, in all other words, and just to put it plainly, they got it right. And this is a franchise that hasn't consistently gotten it right. That's why I started off with the GM is good. The coach is here. The owners got it. The draft is over, and you got exactly what you needed. Maybe not some of the players you wanted, but you got some guys that you needed. And they did it their way, the smarter way. Guys that they really liked, like they went and brought last year's draft. Traded up for Christian Harris. Went and got John Mechie, right? So some more Bama guys. This is a Bama. They got Bama all up and through Houston now, right? You got Ohio State, but between Will Anderson and Henry Toto, now Christian Harris from last
year. Head coach.
Then you got two SEC guys in Florida and LSU. You got to know the type of trash talk that locker room is going to have for the next 4 to 5 seasons. Is going to be fire when SEC conference play comes around. You got to know it. But they were surprised that the fan base got it. I mean, that the franchise got it right. And overall, I believe so as well. I saw something floating around that Houston got a D in the draft. Total BS. Yes. Don't buy it. I think for what Houston was able to do in the offseason free agency period and coming out of the NFL draft, I am comfortable giving this team an A-.
I think if you give the Houston Texans anything below let's say a B, maybe a B minus, you're just plain old stupid and ignorant at this point. Let me just go ahead and say that, because I don't know how you look at where this team was a couple years ago and see what they have been able to build over the last couple of years, but more so the risk and the confidence that it took for Nick Caserio and D'Amico Ryans to go out there and do what they did. Let me just say that right off the bat. Like, I think if you just give them anything below a B minus, I'll be generous. A B minus, you're just stupid at that point. But with all that being said, John, I think, you know, my final thoughts of the 2023 draft is this. It is finally time for this organization to move forward with the second part of the rebuilding process. And I say that because on Saturday, I had an opportunity to ask Nick Caserio, because I remember when he first got here, and I remember doing the introductory of David Culley. He was talking about, you know, building a franchise that can basically sustain success. And he said, I remember at that press conference that we was a part of, he said, well, on Zoom because it was COVID, but I remember that he said that it's a process to building a team. And he mentioned that it was going to be a very long process. And I go back to that press conference and I look at to all of the events that has transpired, and I look at more so this year's draft class and last year's draft class. John, I believe that almost every single position the Houston Texans have a foundation in place. Damian Pierce, Keon Green, Christian Harris, Derek Stingley Jr., Jalen Petrie. Then this year you add Will Anderson Jr., CJ Stroud. Like, those are your foundational pieces. But at the same time, they also added depth that they can actually utilize these guys, i.e. Xavier Hutchinson. As of right now, he's going to be a depth number. Juice, he's going to be a depth number. Like, I love the fact that it finally seemed like the Houston Texans have a great mixture of foundational pieces, young pieces, depth pieces that they can orchestrate along with the veterans. And now we are really going to start seeing this team move forward with their rebuilding process, especially considering the fact that you now have a head coach who I do believe is the main reason why, or one of the main reasons why, CJ Stroud is here in the city of Houston. But this, I'm not going to call it the greatest draft of all time, because of course we got to give it time for that notion. But for the second year in a row, matter of fact, for the third year in a row, because given everything that Nick Caserio had going on in 2021, I still say that he did a decent job in that draft. But for the third year in a row, man, Nick Caserio has really orchestrated this draft. He has really put together some very good prospects that can say, you know what, we have enough foundational pieces in place. Now it's time for us to really go out there and really compete. Look, I understand this is not a championship team as of right now. Hell, it might not even be a playoff team as of right now. But those long days of the game being over at halftime when it's 20-0 against the Washington Commanders or whatever the case might be, you got 5-6 running backs rushing over 100 yards, Derrick Henry, multiple games of 200. All those days, unbearable football days, are over, and I can't wait to see what the future has for this organization.
Yeah, I think those days will start to be over. Nick Caserio said that he can't say enough about D'Amico's involvement and communication. And I also want to note that Nick Caserio also said that our football players that they drafted are good players, but they're better human beings. And so this is a guy between himself and D'Amico Ryans. They're getting good guys in the locker room, tenacious guys, ferocious guys, guys that competed at the highest level in college football, guys that competed at the highest level at their position, brought them into the building. I think that for the first time in a very long time, Houston will have a roster that is competitive, that is respectable, that can go out and win the AFC South. You heard it here first.
Oh, whoa. The whole, by the way, AFC South about to be lit because the quarterbacks they got here. Oh, man. Anthony Rich and Will Levis in Tennessee. Lord have mercy.
He made his way to the AFC South. Wasn't with Houston, thank God.
Thank God. Which, by the way,
in the AFC South.
John, that means our boy Wig is basically top dog as of right now, because he has the best quarterback and best team as of right now.
As of right now.
I can't wait for the alternate crossover, boy.
Y'all heard it. Thank you guys for checking out today's episode of the Locked On Texans podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at Locked On Texans. And of course, give me a follow at John_Hickman12. Throw a sub out on YouTube under Locked On Texans. You guys have been doing an amazing job. So shout out to our everydayers. If you are new to the podcast, welcome in. Welcome home. This is family. Family business includes giving us a subscription on YouTube.
And as always, I'm your host, Cody M. Davis. Please remember to follow me on Twitter at CodyDavis_24. Once again, that's Cody, COTYDAVIS_24. Man, thank y'all so much for making this whole entire draft season fun, especially when things got a little scary. We like, what the hell is going on? Man, just communicating with you guys in the comments on Twitter and stuff was really, really fun. By the way, we get our first opportunity to see these rookies in actions on Friday at the start of rookie mini camp. Of course, we will be there. Can't wait to show you guys what CJ Stroud looks like in a Houston Texans jersey. It's exciting times here in the city of Houston. But until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace.